hello everybody. Thanks for joining one more Cloud Lunch and Learn. Today we have here with us Andre Melancia. I am Jackson Felden and will be your moderator for today. And we have an interesting session today, melting Microsoft AI Foundry, an evil Azure story. And just looking to learn some bits and pieces with Andre. Andre, if you want to give a quick intro about yourself, and then I will share your screen and you are ready to take over the show.
Okay, so let's just say that my name is Andre Melancia. I usually consider myself a human being, and let's keep it at that.
Simple like that, yes. Okay, Andre, let me share, I believe, let me just share your screen. And here. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, Andre, and everybody who is watching us, if you have any questions, please feel free to add them on the chat, and then I will read them for Andre, and Andre is happy to take the questions as they come. Okay, Andre, the show is yours. I will be here in the background. If you need anything, please let me know.
Okay, thank you very much, my friend. Let's get started. First things first, robots will take over, but I don't think they will be very successful because if this is anything like what's happening currently on StreamYard, where I move, but then my hand moves like, slow framed, I don't think we have anything to fear from robots. Okay, I think it is mostly just me, but strangely enough, I checked, it's not my computer, because my computer's CPU is actually very low, so it is not me. It is somewhere in a server. Okay, so as I mentioned, my name is Andre Melancia. This was my cat, which was always at home with me and helping me present these crazy sessions. I usually do some strange sessions, as you mentioned, actually with weird names. And these usually come along because it is so very boring to make boring sessions without interesting names. So I do try to make them as best as possible. I try to do them a bit all over the world and in multiple languages. So obviously English, also Portuguese, and if possible, other languages like Spanish and a few others. Always fun to do that, but yeah. Anyway, let's move on and talk about what we have today. We have an evil story about Foundry, and nobody actually knows nowadays how to refer to Foundry. Is it Microsoft Foundry? Is it AI Foundry? Azure Foundry? What is the name? I actually have a slide to explain that, so no worries. Let's continue and talk about a few things. However, before we start, I want to welcome you to ask any questions you would like, and we will try to keep them flexible and try to answer them throughout the session. So let's see what happens. If you see my face going slowly in the webcam, please ignore it, okay? It's just bots trying to sabotage the session. Okay, so the name changes, and I don't have that many slides, but I was in Tunisia at the end of last year, in the middle of December, end of December, and there was a session that I had to present, which was this one, and I felt like, I have some time, a few hours until my session. Let's actually create a slide to explain the name changes and all the technologies involved along the way, because it might be useful to also understand what technologies are involved. So in 2015, maybe around that time, maybe a bit late, maybe a bit before, we had Cortana Intelligence Suite, which had a few services. You probably heard of Cortana, but this is just branding to mention the name Cortana along with some AI services. And over time, they just started to call them cognitive services. After that, at the same time, parallel, 2015, 2016, I can't remember exactly when, we started to have something called Azure Machine Learning. It didn't have that address of ml.azure.com, which does now, by the way. So it went through a lot of transformations. It started as a graphical tool, and then it changed to a different interface, and then to a different interface. We're up to, I don't know, version 4 at this moment, something like that. Now, at this somewhere along the line, Microsoft renamed cognitive services to AI services, which actually caused me to have to change all my sessions content to AI services now. But I kind of understand because AI is trending. Okay, now. Somewhere along the line, in the last 3 years, round numbers, and please note that this is a different colored arrow, we actually started to have Azure OpenAI Studio to actually deal with generative AI. So, to do chatbots and things like that. They use the exact same interface as Azure Machine Learning because currently the idea is to join all of them together, but that has not fully materialized yet, and it's been something like 3 years. But the interface is literally the same from Azure Machine Learning to this, and even a lot of functionality like the compute the compute tab and a few others, they're literally the same. The model catalog tab, which I'll show you in a second, they are literally the same. Because much of the functionality that you have in one you can use in the other and vice versa. So the idea is that they are actually common, and then Azure Machine Learning will eventually be part of the same thing, but it hasn't fully happened yet. They are still separated. Now, simultaneously, or actually a bit later, maybe a year later, Microsoft started to use more services than just OpenAI. So it started to use, things like Hugging Face and deploying models. Currently, we have something like 11,000 models from the original OpenAI, which was about 30, 40, 50. I think the peak was 50 at any given time. So AI Studio was born, probably the best name that I've seen for it. Very Microsoft, very something studio, because we like studio. And then, they started to integrate these AI services into it, which was a good idea. So we had things like computer vision, we had speech services, etc. I will show you some of these as now they are more together. But they started to integrate them into the AI Studio. And then eventually, and this was a year and a bit ago, so September, not this year, the previous one, they started to call it Azure AI Foundry, and that becomes a problem. And it is actually one of the jokes for the name of my session, because no one can actually understand what Foundry means. Okay, so if you are a native English speaker, Foundry, you can understand Foundry. It's like the place where you melt the metal, hence the name of the session. But if you are not, it just gets confusing. Also the same for the Fabric naming. When they created Microsoft Fabric and separated from Synapse Analytics, which wasn't exactly the best name as well for different reasons, they decided to call it Microsoft Fabric, which actually overlaps with something called Azure Service Fabric, which was discontinued in 2019. So that generated a whole bunch of problems because all the searches online said that the thing was discontinued in 2019. Anyway, moving forward to this November, and someone out there in marketing decided to rename it to Microsoft Foundry. So no Azure anymore, no AI anymore, which is actually the most important part of the marketing thing, isn't it? So they decided to rename it because, marketing people need to get a bonus at the end of the year. So every 6 months in some big event like Ignite or Build, they just renamed the thing. Okay, which is actually not good. So they renamed it, a bit before Ignite, and before you still had ai.azure.com. You still do. So you had that in here, you have that in AI Studio, but now they have a new version of the portal. You might see it as preview. This slide is a bit older. It has changed since. Again, there was like a switch, but it will guide you to a place which is ai.azure.com/next generation. And then from there, you see the exact same thing, but visually in a different way. Now, we expect that this will be finalized in the next announcement, maybe in builds, we assume. But for now, I will show you in the old version where you can still work very well, where you can still, get all of the things that you need. They are literally the same. So if you are seeing this after the full change of this, everything that I'm showing you will still be there, just in a slightly different place, okay? There might also be some small changes that you have to do, because when you swap from this one to this one, some of the projects do not fully migrate. I've seen that as a problem myself. So my recommendation is, if you move to next gen, make sure that you start new projects. It shouldn't be a problem, but just, avoid some weird situations like I've had. But then again, I started very early, so hopefully, in a few months, this won't even be a problem. Okay, having said that, I do not have any more slides. I will just do demos from now on. Actually, that's not entirely true. I do have one more slide. But in any case, let's talk about how AI operates. And I usually show this sandwich, about a year ago when I did another session, also for Cloud Lunch and Learn, I probably showed this slide as well. And it is a good indication how AI actually works. Because for AI, this is technically a sandwich. You have the plates, you have bread, you have cheese, you have ham, and then you have bread again. So technically, this is a sandwich. It's just not very convenient for us humans to eat it, okay? But if you ask small kids, if you ask a computer, they will definitely say it's a sandwich. Now, having said that, let's have a look at some demos. How do we get started? Well, we get started with Azure. If you haven't used Azure before, this is fine. Just go to azure.com. Let's give it a try, azure.com. And from here, all you have to do is to click the button that says Get Started. And you can get started for free. And you can click on Try Azure for free here, and then from that point on, you get access to a certain number of credits. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but maybe about 150 euros, and you have access to it for about 1 month. And after that, you need to start paying. However, all the demos that I'm going to do today will cost me around 10 cents, 20 cents. So you will see that I will use a lot of stuff, but still not pay a lot, okay? So let's risk it, okay? So what do we need to do? Let's go back. Well, let me get rid of this. And eventually you'll go to portal.azure.com once you have your thing set up. And then all you have to do is to go to the top here and search for things. So if I search for Foundry, let's be lazy and use this, and I can just go to Microsoft Foundry, which actually has this very strange symbol. Feels like a helmet, but not a helmet, whatever that could be. And then from here, we actually have quite a lot of services. I will mention just a few, okay? So here is the list of all the services that are deployed. Some of these are just Foundry objects. Others are computer vision, the pure computer vision that we had still in cognitive services. You have a few others like Face API. Anyway, you have quite a lot here, so we'll have a look at what this actually does. Anyway, so for Foundry, how do you get started with Foundry? Okay, and please bear in mind that even though Foundry has renamed things, this is still kind AI services. Okay, so it is Foundry, but it shows up as AI services because the internal name is still called AI services. So we jumped from kind of cognitive services to AI services, but some things are still internally called Studio, some things are still AI services, not so much Foundry. Foundry is just a visual thing that they put here, but under the hood, it's still the old names because they are difficult to change once they are defined. Anyway, how do you create the Foundry object? Very simple. You go here to create, and then from here, you choose a subscription. You come up with any kind of resource group. What is a resource group? It's a box. And on top of subscription is basically how you pay for things. So if you have a free trial, you can get a free trial, and that would be, demo or some trial thing, whatever account. So you can rename them. So you need to pay for it, and then you need to put it inside some sort of box, and that box will actually define the usual things like security, like policies from Azure. So from the top to the bottom, you define company-wide policies or more local policies, and then those need to be respected by these objects. So you can define them all the way up to here, and then you give it some name, whatever name you want. Just write some name, and then you have to define the region. This is a problem. So many regions, which one to choose? So the idea here is that, let me give you a tip. East US and East US 2 are kind of okay if you live on that side of the ocean. However, the most complete region will be something called Sweden, Sweden Central. Okay, although one of the Switzerland ones, I can't remember which one it is, also has a lot of stuff. Okay, but yes, we know Sweden and Switzerland, very easy to confuse the two, but it is Sweden. Think about IKEA, think about ABBA. Okay, build your own, Foundry stuff with IKEA. You have to build the parts yourself. Anyway, Sweden Central is definitely the best because it's in the middle of nowhere, almost close to the North Pole. I don't know, surrounded with snow, and everyone feels like it is so far away that it is difficult to reach in terms of latency for the connection, that most people actually do not use it. So in that case, it's mostly empty and very available for us to have a lot of different AI models to try. Okay, probably there's other different reasons. This is just my opinion. Okay, so we choose Sweden Central. All the rest, we need to create a default project. That's fine. That's very boring. And then there's a few other options, like we need to create a storage. We need to create storage accounts and things like that. Let's leave it blank. This will be automatic. And then networking, never put this as all networks because this will be out to the public. You still have keys and authentication. This is fine. It's still fairly secure, but never do this for a production environment. You're just, you're just risking too much. For a production environment, either you selected networks, which basically is a virtual network here, or just say disabled and use something called private endpoint, which is like getting a cable to connect from service A to service B, and nothing goes in the middle. It doesn't connect to anything else. Okay, so that is the most secure way that you can handle things. It's a private endpoint. It's the best way to do things. Anyway, there's a few other options, but then you say review and create. Obviously, I didn't enter all the information, and then you just click on the create button. Okay, once you are there, you have a lot of services here. They are fairly fast to start. You can see that I have a few of them in Sweden, but then a few others in different regions. Okay, so we'll have a look at those. Besides that, let's just mention that we have a few of the services that still come from before generative AI. So these come from those cognitive services, and to an extent, even in the Cortana intelligence suite that existed before. So computer vision allows you to, upload images and then, describe the images or identify, objects in the images, etc. Custom vision is very specific, so you upload a whole bunch of repetitive photos of things. Let's say you upload a photo of a mug, or you upload a photo of cans of drinks from all angles and different lighting, etc. And then once you need to identify it, you click on a button that says train, and then when you need to actually use it and identify a type of can, in that case, you say, look, based on the training that you did, what was the results of that, based on all the images you saw, and then it will describe the object as a can of this or a can of that. Okay, so very, very easy to use, and the interface is actually something that anyone can use. You don't have to work in IT, so whoever feeds the photos into it to train it can just feed the photos and click on a button to say train, and it doesn't have to work in IT. So the boring work can be done by someone non-IT. Okay, obviously the programming of actually executing the prediction, probably some kind of work in IoT devices or phones or whatever you want, but that is a different story. Okay, we also have Face API that actually identifies and compares faces, but currently, since the last maybe 3-4 years, you actually have to get authorization for that with a lot of lawyer bureaucracy. So some things are available, like counting people, but then if you want to actually identify more detailed things about the person, that becomes much more difficult. Okay, so a few more to mention. I mentioned Azure machine learning. If instead you prefer to use Microsoft Fabric, see the complication there? Microsoft Fabric that exists on the 365 world. In that case, that's fine. You can also do machine learning within things like Spark, but you can also do it in pure Python if you want to. But if you want to do it here, this still works perfectly. No worries there. You can integrate this with a lot of things that come from Foundry, because in the end the interface is pretty much the same, so you can add a lot of things here. Now a few more for speech services: speech to text, text to speech, translation. So this mixes a bit with this translator service to actually provide translations into a whole ton of languages. I've lost count, but it probably is over 100 at this moment, but I'm not exactly sure what the exact number is anymore. It's pretty much every major language, and even small languages are covered here. Okay, so maybe 98% of the world's spoken languages are covered here. Anyway, there's much more. I will leave to the last this document intelligence, which I'll try to show you, but on the Foundry sites. But basically, you receive some kind of invoicing. So let's say you have an invoice for foods. Okay, I'm not sure if this will be widely visible here, but if you have an invoice for foods, you can actually scan it and then say, please analyze the invoice and extract all the numbers and all the lines in the invoice, etc. We'll see that just in a second. Anyway, let's actually experiment with it. So we go here. By the way, Azure OpenAI. So if you want the old OpenAI equivalent, you can still do this, but a Foundry object like this one will already include all OpenAI services. So you really don't need to just get one that is specific for Azure OpenAI. Just get a generic Foundry object and you are able to deploy anything. And I will show you exactly how to find out if you are in the right object or not. So if you start here, you go here and click on Go to Foundry Portal. Okay, just a reference before we actually go there. Keys and endpoints, I'm not going to show you, obviously. I could click on show keys, but if you go to this key 1, key 2, you have random letters and numbers, about 32 or something letters and numbers, which you can use to authenticate. You can also authenticate now with Entra ID, but for some of these things, not all, okay, but it's getting there. It will be as complete as possible, and you can regenerate the key to a new key if you feel that's not secure. At least every 6 months you should regenerate them. That is also one of the reasons why you should actually use Entra ID instead, because it is much more secure and more integrated with all of the security associated with Entra ID and detection of attacks and things like that. Anyway, let's go to overview. Let's click down here. I've already opened it actually, so it jumps into this ai.azure.com. The only difference is I didn't open that one specifically. I had opened another one that I already had. Okay, that's just because most of the demos that I want to do already have models deployed here, so we don't waste any time. Okay, that's the only reason, no other magical reason or trying to cheat or anything like that. Everything that I'm doing here, you can actually try out, so no such problem. Okay, so overview has that API key again, so that is fine. And then from here, you have a few other bits of information that might be needed, some documentation, less interesting now, but you have quite a lot of resources. Some of them you saw just before. Okay, so let's move on to the model catalog. And remember that there's basically two different things here that Microsoft provides. One of them is the AI services. They are already ready for you to use. You just call them, and they process images, they process sound, etc. They're ready for you. The other one is mostly LLMs and other types of models. It's not the only kind, because some of these models can actually handle images as well. For instance, I'll give an example: model catalog. And please bear in mind that I have not experimented with this. But if you look for healthcare, okay, so if you look for healthcare, you have quite a lot of them that say healthcare, fine-tuning, something healthcare chatbots. This is I assume medical, of course. And then a few others, mental health, healthcare, etc. But you also have things like cancer. Okay, there's much more. Okay, there is more. So all of these are skin cancer, breast cancer, etc. They are only a few. In this case, there are only a few. Okay, but they are much of this is widely available online. Universities publish this for free everywhere, so that people can use them, improve them, and share them again to actually, detect these illnesses much better. If you don't do any searching and just unfilter everything, you get 11,000 models here, which is obviously quite a lot. Now, some of these more typical models would be GPT models, Grok, Llama somewhere. I don't know where they are. Llama somewhere. DeepSeek. So you've heard of DeepSeek, the Chinese model. Yes, if you ask them some politically complicated questions, you will not get an answer because the information is not there. However, the information that they would leak information back to China, while might be true, then again, OpenAI does the exact same thing. The difference is that if you host them physically with Microsoft, so if you deploy them here with Microsoft, they have a very big isolation. It's a bubble, nothing goes out. Everything goes in, the answer goes back to the respective client, but whatever happens, it doesn't go out anywhere. Okay, the only thing that eventually goes out, and it is exclusively to you, is the usage, usage metrics, like how many requests, how many tokens, the usual things, but no information about the actual request coming in goes somewhere else to a third party. Okay, and this is important to know. So if you ask them directly, you have access, whoever they are, they have access to the information. If you host them within Microsoft takes this very seriously, because otherwise people would complain about Microsoft. Microsoft would pretty much, be out of business. So obviously they do not want that. A few other examples like Mistral, which is a European model, a large language model named after famous writer. Claude's as well. So nowadays we have Claude. Still things like Sora to actually do image and video generation, actual video generation. But then you have a few others like Llama. Oh, here we go, a Llama here. But if you move to a few more pages ahead, actually we saw that just before. So you have one of those nice faces that actually looks like a ghost's yellow face that looks like a ghost. Here you go. This small happy face, hugging face, that from the far looks like a ghost. And this actually comes from the Hugging Face website, where actually this is the majority, maybe 10,000 of these models are from Hugging Face. And if you want to deploy this is a random selection. I've never even used this one, but if you want to use this one, so you might have some information up here on how to use it. And especially for some of these models, you have information about payment. How do you pay for this? So if I don't have this here, when I click on use this model, I'll probably get more information about how this is paid. In this case, I assume that if I click on use this model, they will ask me to deploy a virtual machine, and that will have a specific cost and that will be my specific problem because it will be my costs. Okay. By the way, it is normal that I do not have quota for this. I'm using a non-production subscription, so I have some limitations here, and especially one of the limitations is the N machines, which are GPU accelerated machines. I actually don't have a quota for that. I could have requested it, but for this specifically, I don't have one. So I'm not actually going to show you this for this one, but I could show you, let's say on the first page of models, let's click on this. Maybe if I want to deploy a model like, I don't know, GPT 5.2, 5.1, let's say 5.1 codex. I don't have this deployed, so it could be an idea. Okay, registration required. Here you go. For some of these models, you need to register. Now, for some subscriptions that I have, this is already requested. For this one, it isn't, so I cannot have access to this now. That's fine. Let's search for an older model where this will be guaranteed to work. GPT, okay, and then I'm going to get a much smaller level of lists. So GPT-5, let's try it out. Okay, so it is my fault. I didn't request access on this model. Sorry about that. But let's try GPT-4. That one, I'm sure it works. GPT-4. Okay, this one definitely works. Okay. So don't worry if that happens. Actually, just follow that form, and then from there you wait either a few hours, maybe a day, and you can have access to it. So nothing wrong with that. Well, if I want to use this model, they actually tell you, see pricing on the Azure page. I'm not going to go there. It's very boring, but it's by token. So we know it's you pay per tokens in most cases. But they actually, for this one specifically, you have two different offers. Direct from Azure models. So that means it's kind of a serverless option where you actually deploy this well, fictitiously deploy because it's serverless, but every time you connect with, you have a big infrastructure that serves this to you and to other people, still very isolated. You don't have to worry. It doesn't interfere with someone else's things, but you get billed by tokens. So tokens in, tokens out, and there was a specific price. However, for some of these models, like the ones that we saw before, you might have managed compute. That means that you can deploy this into a virtual machine. Okay, so if I go for direct Azure models, then I get to choose how I deploy it. So I give it a name, whatever it is. You can just repeat the name if you want to, but you can give it a more specific name. And then the deployment type can be one of multiple. So it can be standard, and let me just mention standard as the normal one where you pay as you go, but you also have provision throughput. And you have some changes here because some of these say, oh, if this is not available in this region, you can go to a different region. Let's say if you are in the European Union, oh, this region is not available. Let's use the other region, but within the same European Union, so that you can guarantee data residency. But the other special type is provision throughputs. Okay, so what is provision throughput? Provision throughput is when you buy, like a reservation for virtual machines, you buy a monthly price for the usage up to a certain level. So you pay for a specific capacity, and we assume that you're not going to exceed that capacity, of course, but you are guaranteed that capacity, which is much higher than standard. So standard has limits. For instance, I will show you here. If you standard, there is a token limit of, in this specific case, 450,000 tokens per minute. Okay, which is not very much. Well, it is one of the biggest ones that I've seen here, but it is not very much if you have thousands of people per minute using this chatbots. Okay, so if that is the case, you actually need a bit more capacity than this. One of the things that we used to use 3 years ago is that we would deploy a whole bunch of this to a whole bunch of different subscriptions, which each of them had some limit like this. And it was a calamity to manage. Nowadays, you can just go to provision throughput, and there's a few types. This says regional, but there's a few types of provision throughput. They are cheaper in the end. So, you pay, I'm not saying it's half, but it's a reasonable number, same as virtual machine reservations and other reservations that you have in Azure. However, unlike reservations that you pay per year or per 3 years, this one you pay per month, and you can adjust every month. Okay, so it's easier to handle it like this. And even during the month, you can still adjust it if you need bigger, so it's still possible to adjust. But in any case, you have a fixed value, but you're also guaranteed infrastructure. So there is reservation for the infrastructure just for you. So in regions like West Europe that are completely full, if you ask for reservation, and especially this is important, if they agree with your reservation, because you have to request it, and sometimes they don't allow you because the infrastructure does not support that capacity along with other people's capacity. So you need to be to request it in advance. But assuming it is allowed, it is exclusively for you. Okay. Anyway, you select something, this goes well, and then you click on deploy. I've done this already. Okay. It takes about 2 minutes, so it's not even a lot of time, because in this specific case, you're not physically deploying any infrastructure. You're just configuring that now you have access to the serverless infrastructure that Microsoft provides for that specific model. They might add more capacity just to adjust and allow for yours as well, but in the end, this is a big cloud environment, scale economy kind of thing. So for you to add this individually, it doesn't add infrastructure to them. They will gradually add it if they feel like it's over 60-70% of the overall capacity for these kind of models. Okay, but in any case, remember that to actually deploy this, the model is quite big. Okay, so GPT-4, GPT-5 models are actually quite big. Now, once you do that, we can, by the way, let's first see where it goes. And if you go down here, you can see models and endpoints. Sometimes this has a different name, like deployments. Okay, so over time, this has changed the name a bit, but it is kind of the same thing. If you do not find it at first, it will be there somewhere. Do not worry. Okay, and now for this one, I have a few deployments. GPT-4 Omni, deployed in this 5414 object. This one has a different name and has something called a model router, which is interesting as well. I'll explain that in a second. And then a few others. Let me just mention that this one got disabled. Why? Because this one and this one are old. So they got disabled maybe a year or 2 years ago when they were discontinued. Okay. One of the things that was in the previous interface is what to do if the model gets discontinued. And in that case, it's very simple. You can choose upgrade it automatically when a better one is available, or you can say, when this one dies, upgrade to the recommended one, or you can simply say don't do anything and they get disabled. Okay, so for instance, for GPT-4 something, I think this is the one of these anyway. No, sorry, this one 3.5. I actually said upgrade to the next available one when this one dies, and it actually died in November last year, so more than a year after it was supposed to actually have died. So this one, which was 3.5 turbo, actually got transformed into 4.1 mini. Okay, with a model version of a year ago, something like that. But this is fine. Okay, the original deployment date was 2024, so you can see that how can I deploy a model 2025 in 2024? So obviously there was an upgrade and they chose a different model. So the name that you have here, which is the deployment name, think of this as you have a server name, which is the DNS name to the server, and then you have a database name, which would be the name of this model. So think of it as a connection string. Okay, but anyway, let's have a look at some of these models in action. Okay, let's go to Playgrounds, and I have two. I have a chat Playgrounds, which is incredibly simple. Okay, so this is pretty much a chatbot, nothing special. I will mention the difference between chatbots and agent in a second. So if I click and say hello for some reason, I get an answer, and please notice that this one says 3.5, but the answer got answered by 4.1 mini. okay? So feels strange, but no, it's just that this is just the name of the thing, but the name of the thing actually corresponds, so here actually corresponds to a deployment of model name 4.1 mini, okay, with a certain version number or model number specific time. If I change it to 4.1, which one did I want? For this one, which is still active, it's much more reasonable and much more intelligent. There was a matter of pricing, because when you change from one to the other, some might be cheaper than others, although it does depend. It's like, offer and demand kind of thing. So the old ones will start to see their price increased. The new ones, the ones that are recommended, see their price decreased, and people, hopefully they move before the end of the thing. Now, there's a special case of model router, and yes, half the world says router, half the people in the United States say router if you are in the West Coast, but I say router like, every other person in the world. But anyway, so if you are here, you can actually say something. And if I also say hello, I'm not going to go into a lot of details to show you the actual chatbot. Everyone's seen this. But see here, model router, what does it do? It analyzes all the possible models that are available. And the list is like 20 models if you look at the documentation. And it will choose the one that's best to answer this question, in this case, a nano. If I say something like, tell me about quantum computing, okay, so maybe I will get one that is not nano now, because they need a bit more detail. So it says model router here for now, but when you actually get an answer, it will redirect to a different one. Please notice that I do not have deployment for that nano anywhere in my infrastructure. Okay, so the model router will actually decide on a different one. Actually, it chose GPT-5 Nano, not 4 this time, okay? But both of these I do not have in my infrastructure, okay? In fact, this 5 Nano, I might not even have that form filled in the subscription to be able to use it, but I'm still getting the results, because the model router will redirect the request to someone else and then get the answer back. You are paying for the nano one, not the router itself, okay? Be careful, okay? Because it's not a fixed price. You pay for whatever router chooses for you, okay? Anyway, I want to try a different one for now, just very quickly. So I will try for Omni, which is probably one of the most used ones. Copilot has been using that for a long time, and I want to do something evil with this, okay? So I'm going to say, you are Stewie Griffin from Family Guy, the baby, okay, from Family Guy, and only talk about, okay, about your world domination plans, okay? So I'm going to save it, of course, okay? And update system message. This is fine, takes a few seconds, and then I'm just going to say hello again, so nothing special here. And now we have Stewie Griffin saying greetings, insignificant human, and stuff like that. I usually use this example because it's a baby. No one gets offended with a baby. But if you ask that baby for details, just like this, so I'm not saying anything bad, the details of the master plan, and then somewhere along the line, it will say things, hopefully, more details. Okay, so this one was very complicated, apparently. Okay, so yeah, so I'm getting the details, eliminate rivals, and when you say something like that, then OpenAI filtered this out, okay? And please notice that I was very polite. I just said hello and details. I didn't say anything else. So it didn't filter me on the way in, but it filtered the result on the way out, okay? So it filtered the result as violent. Where do we have this? If you go down here to guardrails and controls, and again, sometimes this has different names like safety, for instance, okay? And if I go to content filters, I can actually create a filter that will adjust more or less to this value. By default, this is the average, okay? So I can create one based on one of the connections, whatever it would be, doesn't really matter at this moment. And then from here, I can actually say, look, for violence, block less, okay, lowest blocking or highest blocking. So I can adjust to the high or low blocking that you want. Okay, violence, hate, sexual, self-harm, but also jailbreak attacks to actually block the jailbreak attacks. Prompt indirect attacks also block indirect attacks. Annotate is just warning your programming that there is an attack, doesn't really block it, just allows it to go through, and then it is your decision as a programmer if you want to block it or not. You can also add something called the block lists, which blocks words. So if you have specific words, you can block them. My recommendation is, if this is for the input, block them in your code, a bit cheaper. If it is for the outputs, well, you kind of need them here so that they can get blocked directly in the LLM and not in your programming. But if you just want to censor them, you can do it in your programming and still be a bit cheaper, okay? But notice this is for inputs. When I click on next, this is for outputs. So same logic, a few different ones. This is for copyrights and things like that. Slightly different logic, but you can make it work. And then you associate this with one or more connections and one or more deployments. This one doesn't have any deployments, but I have GPT-4 Omni and a few others in a different connection that I could use, and then I would enable this specific content filter for this. Okay, why is it that they always ask me when I'm doing a presentation, and obviously I don't want to answer? So anyway, a few more services. We still have 15 minutes, so let's talk about a few more services. But before that, one of the things that's common with all of this is that you can see. So I've chosen some things. I can add some data, so I can go here and add a data source. This is called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation, and pretty much getting data from here gets a vector search from somewhere. Most cases could be from Azure AI Search, so you get a vector search from this place, and you are allowed to search on your own data. You can, this just generates kind of a wizard for you, but you can control the full details by your own coding if you want to. Okay, this is just an example. I'm going to skip because I don't have one set up for this. But then one of the things that you can do is you can actually say view codes. Okay, so if you click on view code, let me just click on this. If you click on view codes, you actually have a few options here. So you have Python, JSON, etc. You have a few different types of SDK depending on this. So for C#, you have a few SDKs, etc. And then the result will show up here. So you know that you need to connect to a certain address, etc. Actually, this one, this endpoint here, okay? And then from here, you need to define what your messages are going to be. This one is for C# specifically using OpenAI, but there are much more examples using the Foundry SDK, which sadly do not show up here, but they do exist in the documentation. So if you have to choose any of those, you can try with this one very easily, but I would already use the Foundry SDK already, okay? And that one is the recommended one. Okay. In the meantime, let me show you a few more things. So once you go a bit more, you can add some parameters and adjust the parameters of your model. That's all fine. You know, that's expected. But then what if I want to deploy it? I want to deploy it as a web app, okay? So what do? I can actually name the web app, give it some name. This will be some name.azurewebsites.net, okay? And then you can do your own custom DNS name for the actual chatbot. And then subscription will be whatever subscription you want to use to deploy it, of course. And then all the rest, resource group, location, pricing plan. Pricing plan, I would go for free, but please be careful because my free website is actually starting as we speak. It takes, I don't know, 30 seconds. So while I'm showing you this, it is actually getting started, okay? So you can enable the chat history and save it to Cosmos DB. It will create an account for you. Later on, you can change it. But then once it does get deployed, you get to see it, okay? So it actually is here. Let me just move it to the other side. It just hasn't shown up yet. Okay, so sadly it hasn't shown up yet, but let me give you the context of this. So I created a chatbot with a simple text, which is, you are Richard Feynman, the famous physicist. You answer questions like in a way that a 5-year-old can understand them. Okay, so let's get back to this just in a few seconds once this actually loads. One important disclaimer: this is not public. So when this eventually starts, it will require authentication, and that authentication is my Active Directory or Entra ID authentication from my tenants. So we don't really have to worry about the authentication. Okay, so the thing is actually here. I will actually show you the thing while it is running. So it is already here. So hello, let's say hello to the guy, getting the answer. Ooh, okay. Oh, my fault. Okay, let's ignore this. This should have worked, but I think I changed the key at some point in time, and suddenly I would need to update it. Okay, where do I do that? So I can literally tell you where it is. I'm not going to fix it now. I don't remember which model I deployed for it, so I'm not going to waste time, but I will show you exactly where it is. So this is a web app for the websites. You do have authentication here, so it authenticates as a Microsoft authentication. So it does require authentication in this case from this computer, from this tenant. But then we have environment variables. So along the line, client secret, etc. There's going to be something there that will authenticate the things that I changed and didn't notice. Okay, well, I did change. I fixed it in Foundry, but probably forgot to fix it here. Let's say Azure OpenAI key, so might be one of these. I'm not going to show the value for obvious reasons. But then where is the system message? Here we go. Show value. You are Richard Feynman, the famous physicist, and you are happy to answer any questions. So you can change this at any time. They literally deploy this for you. It's a wizard, but you can see that you also have the searching parts created here so that you can, have your own RAG pattern and done automatically. But somewhere along the way, there's also Cosmos DB for you to store all of the chat that you did or that someone does. Okay, if you want to remove the authentication and make it public, you go here to the authentication page, remove the down part, see if everything's okay. So basically remove this and it becomes available to everyone. Be careful, people will use it. Okay, so anyway, this would be chat. Let's just mention that there is much more. So there is also agents. What is the difference between an agent and a chatbot? For that, I actually have the slides. Okay, so if you have a normal chatbot like ChatGPT websites or ChatGPT app that everyone has been, uninstalling on their phones, including me. So all you have to do is start from somewhere, ask the cloud about something and get an answer back. That's it. That's all you do. It's 2 tiers. It's the presentation tier and it's the LLM somewhere in the background. Okay. Obviously, if you use the ChatGPT app, it's a bit more complex than that. But for the website itself or this will actually do literally this, and then you will connect to the website. However, if it is an agent, you have 3 or more tiers. So you have your orchestration tier in the middle, which is where you have all the intelligence, all the system messages, etc. If you are a human, you have a presentation tier somewhere. Again, could be a phone, could be a website, can be whatever you want. An IoT device for all matters. And then you ask some things to your agents, which will be on a server of yours, or in the Foundry agent service, which also exists. And then that will ask the LLM. Now, here, the advantage is that any LLM will work. All of those 11,000 that you saw, all of them will actually work. Well, most of them will actually work. So you get an answer back, but if it makes sense, you can return it directly to the client. If for some reason it doesn't make sense, you go to step number 5, and then here you go and ask either an MCP server, Model Context Protocol server, or directly to a database that already has a vector index. So you either do RAG, retrieval augmented generation, to a database or to Azure AI search, or you ask an MCP server for information, including actual data, if you want to. Now, if it is the MCP server, it will ask someone else that's not in the picture, and then it will return with the answer and get it back to your server here on step number 10. Okay, and eventually it will go, step number, well, one of the steps anyway. I need to recalculate these numbers of steps because it doesn't work. But anyway, so from here, you go to the LLM, you process the information that you received, you get another answer back, and then from there, then you get the answer back to the clients. Okay, and it goes like this a lot. One important situation here is that that agent which is here does not require a graphical interface. Okay, so you can have a whole bunch of different agents talking to each other, and you can have one more arrow that I don't have here, which is I forgot, sorry about that, which is an additional arrow that actually goes to agent protocol and talks to other agents. So maybe in the next version of this, I'll add an additional arrow to agent protocol. Okay, so I always talk about this, but I always forget to add it. Okay, so let's have a look at how agents work. So you can create agents. You say new agents, you create the agent, so you give it instructions to the agent, which makes sense, system message kind of thing. You define what kind of model you want to use and change at any time. The agent itself will be a random number, but the name is whatever you want. Okay, so for instance, I have a few agents called Moneypenny, M, etc. I don't have a demo for them. Okay, but I just have the agents and that's it. Okay, so agent M. Okay, no specific instructions. You know, I just created them for fun, but never actually connected them together, at least not in this one. So a description is just a description that they understand between each other. What do the other agents do? Knowledge, you can add that RAG pattern, and here you can add things from AI search, things from SharePoint, Bing. So if you want to get data from the internet with either Bing search generically or Bing custom search for a specific website, you can get data from Fabric. Okay, so all the databases that connect to Fabric, you can get data from there, which is really amazing. So knowledge allows you to acquire knowledge, do RAG, do other things. Actions is to actually call things like an MCP server. So you can call logic apps, you can call OpenAPI, you can call even a code interpreter to run Python code. You can do a lot of things. Okay, there is MCP server directly here missing, but if you go to Copilot Studio on the 365 side, and if you want to create agents there, you get the exact same interface with knowledge, actions, etc. And that one already has MCP. And if you want to connect to other agents, so this M agent is connected to Moneypenny agents using a connection called M to Moneypenny, okay? And then you can add more agents. Now, this connected agents thing also exists on the other side, on Copilot Studio, and it also allows you to connect to agents from here, from Foundry. So you can interconnect all of them if you like, okay? So they are mostly available. You can in this case you can select an agent here, but I don't have the other sides for for a lot of different reasons, but let's not get there. These are I have this in 2 different tenants for demos. Anyway, like before, you can actually say view code and actually review the code of all of this, which is interesting. So you know the agent ID, you know other things, and then you connect to those things, having access to those, which is obviously quite fun. Okay, but besides agents, there's more playgrounds. So there's playgrounds for speech. And for speech, this is fun, okay? By the way, we are almost running out of time, so maybe I will just do a few more demos for maximum 5 minutes, maybe a bit more, but then we need to close off. So let me do one quick demo of this. Custom avatar, actually text-to-speech avatar. Custom requires your own image, okay? And personal voice, you can actually train it with your voice and then actually get recognized. Okay, so I'll try this one. It could be any of the other ones, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to say just hello, how are you? And then I'm just going to repeat this maybe 2 times just to be lazy. Okay. And then I'm going to say insert gesture here. And then the gesture will be something. This gesture will be something else with a hand to the front, and then maybe another gesture with something else. Okay. No idea. I don't think that gesture is interesting, but okay. So it takes a few seconds, it loads, and then allows you to see things as a generated video, which we will see just in a few seconds. Okay. So while we're doing that, let's continue on to the next few demos. Okay. So if we go to AI services, there's those whole bunch of playgrounds here. One of the interesting ones is this vision and document. So there's speech to text, text to speech. Everyone has seen that kind of thing, but this one is interesting. So if you have invoices, you can actually say, look, run analysis on the invoice, and you actually get an invoice like this. Let me click again. I don't think it worked. So you get an invoice, and then you can see all of the results as a JSON file. Okay, but if you have a look at the fields, they extract all the fields, including some of the content which is in different tables. So you can see that there was 3 tables here, 3 items here corresponding to the second table. So we can get that content all into JSON format and process any kind of invoice that you scan and actually use it and put it into a database. Okay, so this works really well even for other things. So this is invoices, but if you try for identity documents, it also works as well. So of course, if we try this Italian woman, which we all know she's real, obviously, right? She's definitely real, not Lego or anything like that. You also have the information about all of the numbers that you see here, and you can extract them using all of the JSON that even tells you exactly where that number is. Okay, so if you want to do extra validation, you can do it. There's view code here that shows you all the code on how to do this as well. Okay, now there is much more. So there is for faces, there is for a lot of different things. Sadly, we don't have that much time to show you. If I wanted to show everything that I could, it would take me about 2 hours of this, which would be completely crazy. But with faces, let me just show you quickly, because you have 2 faces. Now here, as I mentioned before, there is some limitation about the faces, because we cannot have very advanced face API results unless you actually request authentic authorization with some lawyer talk and a lot of paperwork that you sign. Currently, you just see how many people are there, if they are wearing face masks or not, because during the pandemic this was important. Okay, but you don't get things like hair color, age, etc. For those, you need the extra bureaucracy. Okay, ironically enough, in Europe, GDPR would actually cover it, so you wouldn't need to sign those papers for Face API. But no comment. Okay, there was more. So for images, let me just go back because it doesn't fit here. Like for images, general images, OCR and reads, layout, etc. So you can also do quite a lot of this. Let me just show you 2 things. First, let's go quickly back to speech. Okay, so speech, now we have this. Let's see if this works.
Hello, how are you? How are you? How are you?
Please remember that I said how are you 3 times. Okay, so it's not a glitch. So I did say how are you 3 times, just copy paste, but the movement of the hands worked. Please be careful, because if the text is too small, the hands will not fully move, because it's just too fast for them to do both movements. Anyway, there was one last thing that I want to show you, because that's incredibly fun. Let's go for something called content understanding. So we saw something called document intelligence that handled the invoices. This actually does the same thing, okay? But this adds a bit more. So this not only has like invoices and a few other functionalities, general document analysis, for instance, okay? So let's say you have a text. So this actually allows you to get the result of the texts in a slightly different way. Document intelligence has existed for 7 or 8 years. It's really good. It works. Nothing wrong with that. This one, content understanding, builds on top of that and adds LLMs to actually read and process the information. So if you have this kind of text that says, give me a second, that says some text here, they will actually copy that text, and the results will eventually show up here with all of the names, with all of the things, etc., content. So you have things like can, used, etc. So all of these individual lines are there, but they're also together. So there's going to be JSON parts that actually say the whole phrase, okay? And because this uses LLMs, it builds up to the intelligence, so you can just ask it questions. Is this contract okay? Actually, always ask a lawyer, okay? And that's what they tell you, and they are right. Now, let me try out the absolute last demo, which is I decided to try a video instead, okay? And at the time, the only video that I had was the video you're going to see, okay, which is nice, okay? You can see, let's say, get transcript preview. And I decided to get it there, and automatically it asked these 2 questions: summary, 1 paragraph summary of the conversation, and sentiment, overall sentiment. So it will actually have LLM extract, so everything will be extracted, like the texts, the motion, etc. And then the LLM will get all the information and try to answer these questions, okay? And one of the questions that I asked, and this was me, description of people, 1 paragraph per person, pet, animal, or other character, describing physical and psychological attributes. This doesn't really work that well because of the film that it is, but let's see it anyway. Okay, so let's click on play.
What's this? Who is she? She's beautiful.
Okay, so I think everyone's seen Star Wars. This is a better Star Wars, of course.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
Okay, so this pretty much ends like this. Okay, the cat does not want to be rescued because if you know cats, they don't care. But if you run the analyzer here, you'll actually get answers to those 3 questions that I asked, okay? It will not be perfect answers because this is very psychedelic, as you can imagine, right? But for the first question, involves 3 speakers, which are actually the same, but they are dressed in different ways, so it feels strange. Inquires about a person, introduces as Luke Skywalker. Sentiment is neutral, so, you know, nobody's happy, nobody's sad. But then description, speaker 1's curious, and then speaker 3 introduces a Luke Skywalker, portraying confidence and a sense of mission as he states his intention to rescue someone that does not want to be rescued, okay? So, that kind of thing. Anyway, this is something that you can actually do, and there still is a product called Video Indexer, so vi.microsoft.com or something similar, that still works, that actually creates the subtitles, actually creates timelines and things like that for all of the people that are there in the video, and it does very interesting things. So hopefully this content understanding will build on document intelligence, will build on video indexer, and it will join the best of both worlds and be, you know, really, really good. We still don't know that. Anyway, if you have a cat, you know that it is the cats that are going to save us from the machine apocalypse, so keep a nice cat around. This looks like my cat Lioa, but sadly it isn't. But you need a cat to chew on the wires and actually stop Skynet whenever you can, okay? Anyway, always remember that I like to use this one. Always remember that machines don't fully understand what humans understand. Obviously, this is not a very big cow. These are 2 different cows. This happens because you didn't put safeguards into the analysis, and one of the safeguards would be the cow cannot have 5.5 meters, okay? It has to be a maximum of 3 meters or whatever a cow has, okay? Having said that, I am open to questions. I'm not sure if there are any questions at this moment, but if there are, feel free to ask them.
Hello,
Of
Andre.
course.
Yeah, I think you explained too well. Let me just check again. Yeah,
Not sure.
there are no questions on the chat.
Okay, no worries. No worries. No worries.
Yeah,
Anyway.
thank you very much for your good explanation on all this AI journey. I know there are everybody now is looking to learn AI. Yeah, that was really good, and thank you one more time for coming.
No problem. Really, really happy to be here. Thank you very much for having me. In any case, just to mention, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions you have in the future. If you are somewhere in Romania in the next 2 days, I'll be there for a SQL Saturday, and then I'll be in Paris for AI tours and things like that. So happy to meet with anyone who's there. Okay, so Jackson, thank you very much for having me here once again. Really happy to do it. And yes, my face is, framing really, really bad. Anyway, my friends, thank you very much for everything, and hope to see you soon. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and stay tuned for more sessions to come. Okay, see you next time.
Thank you very much, everyone.